My brothers and sisters, this is Ryan Zell of the Catholic Forum on both YouTube and on Discord. Recently, I had a debate with an Independent Fundamentalist Baptist on the Holy Eucharist. His name is Thomas, with a cross next to it. What you will see in this debate is a twisting of Scripture, adding to Scripture, and denying Scripture. Thomas will be seen denying the red letter words of Christ in this debate. This is a tutorial on how to debate the Holy Eucharist with either a Protestant or an unprotestant Protestant, which means the Protestant believes in some created doctrines of the Reformers but denies being a Protestant. You go figure. If it quacks like a duck and walks like a duck, it's probably a duck. All right, the first strategy is to make sure you ask your interlocutor if he is a Bible-believing Christian. The answer is always yes. Thomas already claimed he is a Bible-believing Christian. The second strategy is to ask your interlocutor a multiple-choice question as to what Jesus meant at the Last Supper. The third strategy is ask him if the flesh on the cross is Jesus' real, true, and literal flesh, meaning it is not symbolic, figurative, or metaphorical, etc., etc. The fourth strategy is ask your interlocutor if Jesus came down from heaven and tapped him on the shoulder and told him that the bread is his real, true, substantial, and literal flesh, would you believe him? Thomas said, sure, I would believe him. And the fifth strategy is to give him scripture which will shock him. Then you will start seeing his babbling. The second strategy is ask these two questions. What did Jesus say in Matthew 26:26? And then ask, what did Jesus mean in Matthew 26:26? Then give him a list of answers that he can choose from, and he can choose more than one. Take, eat, this is my sacramental body, my symbolic body, this represents my body, this is a metaphor of my body, this is my figurative body, this is the bread that my body remains alongside of, this is my spiritual body, this signifies my body, and take, eat, this is my body. What will the Bible-believing Christian pick? Well, here are my answers. Here is my answer to question 1. What did Jesus say in Matthew 26:26? Take, eat, this is my body. And the answer to question number 2 is, what did Jesus mean in Matthew 26:26? Take, eat, this is my body. Now off to see what Thomas said. Thomas answers these two questions on the right. He chose number 9 for what Jesus said, take, eat, this is my body. But he chose 2 and 3 as what Jesus said. So I had to answer him, of course. So according to you, Jesus said this, but he really meant, take, eat, this is my symbolic body, which represents my body. My Bible doesn't say this. Does yours? Was the body of Jesus on the cross, was it symbolic and just representative of his body? Let's find out. We're going to see Protestant scripture twisting and adding to the words of Christ. Matthew 26:26-28 states, and as they were eating, Jesus took bread and blessed it and broke it and gave it to the disciples and said, take, eat, this is my body. Is a verb which means to be. Here it is, brothers and sisters. Jesus took bread, blessed bread, and broke it, and gave it to his disciples and said, and here is Thomas doing it again. Jesus took bread and blessed it and broke it and gave it to the disciples and said, take, eat. This represents my body. My Bible just doesn't say that, Thomas. Why are you putting something in the Bible? Why are you adding to the Bible? Can you imagine if I added something to the Bible like this? What you would be saying? This is incredible. Now we go on to the third strategy. So Thomas, my Bible doesn't say, take, eat, this is my symbolic body, which represents my body. That's you saying it, not Jesus. Now we have to ask a very pertinent question. Thomas, so does this mean that Christ's body on a cross was his literal, real body and not a symbolic body or a representation of his body? Now here is where we get to see Thomas say something that is true. It was literal, he states, but he adds this. It was a literal completion of what Christ symbolically showed at the Last Supper. Very interesting, Thomas. You are what we call a Protestant scripture twister. Thomas now admits that the flesh on the cross was literal. Now he then adds his reformational interpretation of what Jesus means. Stop adding to scripture, Thomas. He said, take, eat. This is my symbolic flesh. Oops! No, he didn't, Thomas. He said, take, eat. This is my flesh. I thought you were a Bible-believing Christian. No, Thomas. I guess you just like to add to scripture. Now for the fourth strategy. We have to ask this question. If Jesus came down from heaven, tapped you on your shoulder, and told you that the bread at all the apostolic churches becomes his literal, true, real flesh, what would Thomas say to Jesus' face? Well, here's Thomas's answer. Well, then sure I would accept it. Oh, really? Well, let's find out. Then Thomas asks me a question. If Jesus came down from heaven, tapped you on the shoulder, told you that the bread and wine are only representations for what he would do on the cross, not literal flesh and blood, what would you say? Well, Thomas, I would not accept it. It must be a demon, because Jesus never backtracks on anything he stated at any time in the scriptures. Here is what Ryan Zell would say. Get thee behind me, Satan. Get thee behind me, Thomas. It would be a demon or Satan himself. In the next slide, we will see why. This is the fifth strategy. I post John 6:51 from the King James Version in 3 parts. And as we will see, this is what is known as a logical sequence given to us by Christ himself. Now we give the interlocutor the biblical evidence that Jesus Christ is speaking literally. More importantly, that Jesus does tap all of us on the shoulders when we read John 6. And as an aside, John 6:51, there are only 2 places in Scripture where the words eat and live forever are. And it's in Genesis 3:22. We don't have to discuss the first part in this presentation. So Jesus says, I am the living bread which came down from heaven. If any man eat of this bread, he shall live forever. And in 51b, and the bread that I will give is my flesh. Is a verb which is to be. And in 51c, which I will give for the life of the world. When does Jesus give this flesh for the life of the world? Thomas, he gave it on the cross. Now we're going to put it all together and show why you are standing with the heterodox. Now I'm going to break down for Thomas John 6:51, which makes everything afterwards make total sense. Jesus did tell us that the bread he gives is our flesh. He tells you this, and he tapped you directly on your shoulder and my shoulder and told us that this bread is his flesh. The same flesh that was on the cross. Now, if we look at the logical sequence of the A, B, and C, A, B, and C, if A is bread and B is flesh, and this comes from John 51b, and C is the literal flesh on the cross, which Thomas agreed to, then if A equals B and B equals C, then A equals B equals C. The bread is the flesh that was literally given on the cross. I would suggest stopping the video here and just taking this one in. We saw that I did ask Thomas if he would accept it if Jesus came down from heaven and told you that the bread is his flesh, the same flesh on the cross. Would he believe it? Here is his answer. Well, then sure I would accept it. Yeah, you bet your rear end. Here is his response. If he said it was literal flesh, and Thomas also states, Jesus never once said it was his literal flesh. Hello, Thomas. Is Thomas lying here? He probably thinks he stated if he said it was his literal flesh. Just what did he say? The bread I will give is my flesh in John 6:51. And the bread I will give is the same flesh on the cross, which you agreed to. Do I have to give you an English grammar lesson, Thomas? It's as strong in the Greek as it is here. You are denying the red letter words of Christ. I suggest reading John 6:51 with the mind of Christ. Here in the logical sequence, for your benefit, I'm repeating myself. If A equals bread and B equals his flesh, and if C, his flesh body on the cross, and if B equals C, according to Christ, and if A equals B, according to Christ, then A equals B equals C. You can't walk or run away from this. It's perspicuous, Thomas. Jesus did reference his literal flesh on the cross, which means the bread that he will give is his true, real, literal, and substantial body. Now we're going to see some real nonsense from Thomas. So I had to ask him a question. Yes or no? Do you believe John 6:51? Yes or no? I personally believe John 6:51, the red letter words of Christ. Here is Thomas's answer. It's not. It's the same because the meaning to eat his flesh is to trust in him. Okay, Thomas. Not even partially correct. It's to trust in him for salvation. That's why everyone left him but the apostles, because they knew Jesus was the one they would have to trust in to be saved. Again, partially true. Yes, Thomas, the apostles, unlike the disciples, stayed because they did trust Jesus. They didn't know what Jesus meant by eating and drinking his body and blood, but they do find out at the Last Supper. And the apostles stayed because of what Peter said and what he stated, but Judas should have left, and he doesn't. Watch the denials and adding of Scripture. Here's his nonsense. I don't deny those words. I deny the people who take those words and teach it's literal instead of understanding how it's meant to be, as Jesus using it in a way to subtly say to trust in him and to avoid getting arrested before the time. Lord Almighty. Now I gave him a logical sequence. A equals B equals C. And here he is denying those red letter words. So Thomas, why does Jesus tell us the same flesh on the cross is the same bread that is his flesh? Thomas, you are blind. He was given the words of Christ and the logical sequence, and this is what he states. You are assuming that A equals literal and B equals literal. Thomas, Jesus is the one who stated the bread and the flesh are his literal flesh. Not me. It's the same flesh on the cross. Why are you blaming me? I'm just the messenger. Why did Jesus come down and tap you on the shoulder and stated, "The bread is my flesh that I gave for the life of the world"? Would you believe him? Thomas said he would believe it, and now he states the usual Protestant nonsense. Jesus said that, but he meant the opposite. Now Jesus states this. Thomas states this. Yes, the apostles believe it was simply to show what would happen to Christ, not literally blood, because drinking blood was against the law. And the apostles had been shown to question God when it tells them to go against the law. Acts 10:14. Note that this is not me saying we are told to the law. It's me showing how the reactions to the apostles, to Christ's words, show that they didn't take it as literally blood. Well, Thomas, they walked away. John 6:66, the Protestant verse. So Thomas says that the apostles believed and stated it was simply to show what would happen to Christ. Not literal drinking of blood was against the law. Actually, the apostles were there and didn't say to Jesus, "We know you didn't really mean to eat human flesh and drink blood." My Bible doesn't say this, Thomas. Stop offering your opinions and interpretations, or the Reformers' interpretations to the text, and read what is in the text as it is written, like we all do, like all Bible-believing Christians do. I hope you enjoyed this video and learned from it. Use the 5 strategies and make them your own, and the logical sequence, which is very important. Please click the like button and subscribe to the YouTube channel, and also scan the QRS code to join us on the Catholic Forum on Discord. God bless you all.